What's up, guys? Welcome to the Second Take. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jonah.
And we are back to talk about basketball this time, not football. We'll talk about the Super Bowl next week since obviously this week is the Pro Bowl and then the Super Bowl will be the following. And the Pro Bowl, as Jonah says, shouldn't even be a thing, so no need to talk about football right now. So we're going to talk about basketball instead since we've neglected that for a while. And college basketball is definitely heating up, but first we're going to start with the NBA. So the Cavs are losers of 6 of their last 8, and lots of drama going around with that team. Lost again last night. LeBron is screaming for a playmaker. So what do you make of it?
Well, we'll talk about the Knicks' response to that in a minute, but but the Cavs, I think this isn't entirely unexpected. Like, good teams will sometimes go through a stretch like this. They got to get some stuff together. I mean, it's a mid-season thing. We've seen the Cavs do this kind of thing before where they have, this seems a little less voluntary in the past, but like any teams that LeBron has been on, there's usually a stretch in the middle of the season around this point where the team doesn't perform well. And there's all this frustration and buzz, and I'm not worried about the Cavs, basically, is my point. Like, they played well in that Spurs game. I think it's just, I don't know, I don't see it as a problem, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, to the naked eye, it's scary just because they lose to the Pelicans with no Anthony Davis. They go up 36 points to Terrence Jones, like nobody, and Kyrie had 50 almost in the game. So, like, you don't really see that coming. Basically, in the game that Kyrie scores 49, LeBron has a triple-double, and you still lose to the Pelicans. That's not a good scenario. Then the Kings' loss was at home to a bad Kings team. That's kind of scary, too. But really, they've just played a ton of basketball in the recent couple months. They played deep into the postseason, obviously winning the title, and then jumped right back into things and had a decent preseason and then the long stretch of the schedule here. So pretty much they're just trying to get to the All-Star break, give themselves a week, and then get back to it and get ready for the playoffs because everybody is pretty confident that they're going to be at the very least in the Eastern Conference Finals and most likely farther than that.
Yeah, I think it is exposing a little bit some issues with the Cavs. Like you said, when Kyrie scoring that many points, LeBron gets a triple-double, and they still lose, that obviously is pointing to problems with the rest of their roster. And I think that they tried to address some of that a little while ago with the Kyle Korver trade, but like LeBron said, it seems like they kind of need one more backcourt guy other than Kyrie who can kind of make plays. And that's the thing that's missing right now, but I think this is just kind of a rough stretch. The last 3 games in a row that they lost by those 3 games by a combined 9 points. So, like, I wouldn't say it's panic time.
Yeah, it's just a team that you don't expect to lose much, but luckily for them, Toronto, who's the 2 seed, has been losing pretty much right along with them, so no ground has really been gained, and I'm sure they'll still have home court throughout the East. But the interesting thing is that the team isn't necessarily worse. No one really thought it was going to be worse going into the season, and then they get Korver, and everyone thought it would be much better. But the defense just isn't really there, and it happens a lot with LeBron during the regular season. Like, if you watch the Kings game, DeMarcus Cousins had a drive by, I want to say Tristan Thompson, at the end of the regulation, where he just laid it in with his left hand, and LeBron was right there on the strong side trying to help out and just didn't really offer anything. So he's kind of getting back to like how he was last year when Jonah and I were saying that it was a scary team, that they looked like they were going to blow themselves up just because they were fighting so much and like it was just dysfunctional. They're not dysfunctional right now. It's just you can tell that they're definitely tired and need a break for sure.
Right, and that dysfunctional team went on to win the title.
Right.
So, like,
and well, I mean,
I don't think we should be.
We did see that switch get flipped, like, late into the season.
Right, and I don't see any reason, even if they don't add somebody, I don't see any reason why they can't flip that switch again.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to bet against LeBron.
Right, you'd be silly to bet against LeBron.
Unless, I mean, a lot of people bet against him once he gets to the finals, but, like, you get the idea. So LeBron's been screaming for a playmaker, and says they're a very top-heavy team. Now, personally, if I was a role player on that team, that either does one of two things to you. It either makes you play much better or makes you just flat out quit. So I think that their veteran guys that are on that team will probably respond positively to that. But some of the younger guys like Kay Felder, you get a little worried that could potentially ruin him. However, I think that, I mean, he's definitely right. They're not the deepest team in the world, but a team with so much money and talent at the top, you can't really be that deep. Like, if you're going to invest that much money into LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love, you're not going to have a lot of depth. Like, the Warriors are kind of an anomaly because all those guys were there, and then KD decided to join. So that's pretty much, he's just looking to find a way to match up with them come finals time.
Right. I mean, it was a conscious decision to build the roster that way, and that's how the Heat teams were organized that LeBron was on. And he's used to playing on teams like this that are made up of a few stars and a bunch of role players that have very defined roles. And I think that in the past, what you've seen is the biggest supporting roles, especially with Miami, were played by more veteran guys. And
I think they were better veteran guys too.
Right. And the veteran guys on this Cavs team, it's a little tougher to see that those kind of contributions coming from those guys besides Corver. I mean, it's like a lot of Richard Jefferson, and I mean, you can never have too much Richard Jefferson, of course, for entertainment purposes, but there's a point where you need your veteran guys to make contributions if you have such a top-heavy team. And Corver's good at what he does, but he's not exactly a super multi-dimensional player. So
yeah, and I mean, they've never had a problem with offense per se. Like, you have LeBron and Kyrie, you're gonna score. I mean, LeBron.
But they're scoring in these losses.
Yeah, like, LeBron doesn't need a superstar alongside him to make his team better. You can give him anybody, and he's gonna allow that person to get open shots. It's just a matter of whether or not they can make them. And you expect pros to make a decent amount of their open looks. So that's why it's not like the fact that you have to compare, I don't know, say Richard Jefferson to, like, Andre Iguodala coming off the bench for the Warriors. Yeah, obviously the Warriors are favored in that scenario, but LeBron makes Richard Jefferson so much better, so it kind of evens out. So the move for Corver makes sense just because you put a shooter around LeBron, and you look at, like, Ray Allen on Miami and how much better that team became when they had that shooter. But their defense also suffers a lot because Corver's obviously not the best defender, and when he's going to come in for JR, who's also not the best defender.
Right.
And as we talked about, LeBron has to commit himself, and when he does, he's fantastic, but there's a lot of stretches where he just takes a lot of time off. Kyrie's a horrendous defender. Kevin Love's a pretty bad defender. And Tristan Thompson's the rim protector, but he's more of just a really good rebounder. So defensively has been their problem so far. But like we said, LeBron's going to turn it up in a couple months, and they'll be just fine.
Yeah, I would anticipate them being fine in the end.
So,
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just kind of like you said, I think the biggest issue is that they're tired.
Right.
And, LeBron's talking about needing a playmaker. I think that it might seem that they need another piece right now, but some rest might do the trick as much as that would.
Yeah, I mean, it is worth mentioning that, so the last 3 games, LeBron has played 43-plus minutes. He played, I think, over 45 the last 2 games, and then 3 games ago played like 43 and a little bit more. And that's the first time in his career, or first time in the last 8 years that he's played that many minutes in 3 straight games. And he's also leading the league in minutes per game. And as this is his 12th or 13th season, that would be the deepest, or like the oldest, deepest stretch of seasons for a player to lead the league in minutes, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So he's obviously, I mean, yes, he's still young, per se, but in the basketball world, he's not that young. Got a lot of minutes on the body, got a lot of miles on the body. So he definitely needs to take a break. I heard somebody say they should just sit him down for a week. Just say, like, no basketball, just take a week off.
Well, right. I mean, that's what he did. Like, he just took...
Yeah, that quote-unquote back injury. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I was like, you sit down LeBron for a couple weeks. We'll be fine without you. Just be ready for June. That was what that was.
Right, and I mean, that gives them a chance. Right now, everyone thinks they're already exploding, so... give the other guys a chance, see what they can do, and then you put LeBron in the scenario again, and he makes everybody better. So, I don't know, you can't lose. They'll be fine. But
like, right, I mean, yeah, I think they'll be fine. Although the Knicks...
are trying to make them not fine.
Yeah, the Knicks... When LeBron said he needed a playmaker, the Knicks helpfully called up and offered noted playmaker Carmelo Anthony in exchange for Kevin Love, according to reports. That's a trade that, to me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense for either team. But
I mean, for the Cavs, it definitely doesn't, just in the sense that you want to get younger at this point, not older, if they do anything.
Right.
I actually like Melo a lot. I think he's had a decent year. A lot of the criticism he gets is pretty unfair, just because that's what comes with the territory, and for some of it, he's definitely brought on himself. But he
right, but he's playing in New York, so
exactly, yeah. But I mean, the guy's really playing well for most of the games. I mean, every time I look, I feel like he has 30.
Yeah, I just feel like, and like, speaking as a Knicks fan here, like, the only thing that matters with this team right now is Porzingis. Like, he's the ticket. He's going to be the next big Knicks star. And so it is a little frustrating as a Knicks fan at the end of games when they should be getting the ball to Porzingis because, you know, he's their best player. And instead you get, like, Melo and Derrick Rose, like posting up on people, or just, like, I mean, Melo's obviously better than Rose, but the most frustrating thing is when Rose will, like, ISO on two guys at the same time with, like, Porzingis standing under the basket with nobody on him because Rose is playing for his next contract. But that's a little off topic. I'm just not a big fan of Derrick Rose right now.
Rose and Melo are both ball-dominant players. They need to have the ball in their hands pretty much at all times in order to make something happen. And they both do it more so for themselves than for anybody else. And I don't know, from what I've seen so far, it doesn't seem that Porzingis is someone that can necessarily create for himself yet. He can in the post a little bit. Like, he obviously being 7'3", like, what the hell? Just turn around and shoot the ball. But he's not someone that's going to, like DeMarcus Cousins can literally get the ball at the top of the key, make 2 dribble moves and go by and dunk it on you. He can create for himself. And, I mean, a lot of centers can't, but Porzingis definitely will be able to. He just needs to take that next step. So, I personally like Melo with Porzingis. I just think you need a pass-first point guard.
Well, yeah, I think Melo and Porzingis is fine together, and it was pretty good together last year when they did it. But I think Rose has made the whole situation worse, and I think that's why you're starting to hear trade rumors about Melo.
And Joakim Noah
more so than
sucks.
about Melo's play. Well, right. I mean, Joakim Noah is terrible.
Like, you literally are putting out Melo, Derrick Rose, who wants a contract, Kristaps Porzingis, who gets hurt more frequently than most people are hoping. Then you have Melo, who's aging, has everyone against him, and feels like he needs to do things by himself. And then Courtney Lee, who just wants to stand there and shoot, plus someone that should just stay on the other side of half court. So you're playing 5-on-4 with like 2 ball hogs, one guy that doesn't really know how to assert himself, and then a shooter. I mean, the dynamic just doesn't really check out.
I think that your quote just then, the dynamic doesn't really check out, could apply to every Knicks team since like 1989.
Well, it has to do with somebody sitting in the front office potentially stealing money, as Stephen A. Smith would say.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't doubt that. But, yeah, I mean, just the thing, I don't know. I think that the focus of this Knicks team should be developing Porzingis into the best player that he possibly can be. And I think that you can't do that with both Melo and Rose on the team. And obviously you're not trading Rose. So I think that that's why rumors are circulating around Melo. I don't think that, like, the Knicks fan base hasn't really soured on him that much. There just seems to be some bad blood with him and Phil Jackson. But the whole thing is complicated because Melo has a no-trade clause. So
yeah, but the whole thing with Phil Jackson, like, I 100% am behind Melo with that. He has to stand there and answer every single thing that happens, and Phil Jackson is nowhere to be found. Like,
Phil Jackson is the worst thing to happen to the Knicks since Isaiah Thomas.
Like, he literally will say something about how Melo might be getting moved, like, says it through the media or whatever, and Melo's the only one that has to stand there and face the media and answer those questions and talk about it. Like, someone said on ESPN that Phil Jackson hasn't had a press conference or engaged with the media, like, in a actual interview scenario since before the season started.
Sounds like a certain other person I know.
Yes. He's barricaded in some White House weirdo.
Yeah. Maybe that's where Phil is right now.
They're sharing a bottle of something.
Yeah, no one's seen him in forever.
Sharing a bottle of something Russian.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so I mean, so you're asking Melo, who's getting up there in age, who's basically always been known as someone who doesn't. I say this not attacking Melo at all, but people often say he doesn't care as much about winning as he does about money. You could probably make the argument. But he's also getting up there in age, has everyone against him. He's trying to play in New York with a lot of people wanting it just to be the Porzingis show. And also, they can't seem to get any sort of good luck to start. I mean, like,
right.
Melo's attempted game winner the other night that, like, was basically all the way down and somehow popped back out. Like, that ball goes in probably 90% of the time, and it doesn't for him.
Yeah, right. I think a lot of it's bad luck too. I think that they were getting overly lucky at the beginning of the season when it looked like they were going to be like a 5 seed. Like, I was like, oh wow, this is the Knicks team that's going to make the playoffs, and then that turned out. I mean, I'm not ruling out that they'll make the playoffs, but it certainly doesn't look as likely as it did.
Right. I mean, you got to start getting on a winning streak at some point.
Right. And
go ahead.
I think the biggest problem is roster construction, and I think that, I mean, it's not Hornacek's fault. I've been pretty impressed with how well he's been coaching. I think he's a really good coach. I think that the problem is Phil Jackson, because I don't know, the Rose trade I defended at the time because I didn't feel like we were giving up that much. It turns out that it probably hasn't been that good, but I don't really fault him for it.
I still think
the Joakim Noah signing was inexcusable, though.
Yeah, I still think you win the Derrick Rose trade. Just in terms of...
I think that's fine. There's just no reason to spend that money on Joakim Noah. Like, he's a known offensive zero.
And who'd you spend that money on the year before that?
The year before? What do you mean?
Robin Lopez.
Oh, right, yeah, exactly.
Who's the same exact person.
Right, but Lopez is at least younger and can still move. Like,
right, but I'm saying, like, he gives you more or less nothing offensively. Like, he just turns it over. At least that's what he's doing for Chicago nowadays.
He's airballing free throws. It's the other thing he does.
Right. So, but like you said, the roster construction. So, like I said, I think it'd be best if you had a pass first point guard. So not only do you not have that on your starting lineup, but then who's your point guard that comes in off the bench? Brandon Jennings, who's the least pass first point guard in the history of mankind.
Right, like it was all these like intriguing pieces, you know, on this team, but they don't fit, and that's always how it is with the Knicks, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about Kuzminskis?
I like Kuzminskis. Kuzminskis.
Because
but
I saw something the other day that said
I like Hernan Gomez even more.
Oh god.
But
I saw something
I love Hernan Gomez.
the other day that said that the Knicks should blow everything up and just keep Porzingis and Kuzminskis and build around them. I was like, are we playing in Europe like this? I mean, I think Porzingis is fantastic. I think Kuzminskis can be good, but I don't know that you want to build around him as like your franchise small forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine to like keep those guys around, but like the focus of the front office right now should be how do we make Porzingis the centerpiece of the next Knicks playoff team, and that's not what's happening. So,
and the way to do that would probably be to move people and acquire draft picks.
Right, like in terms of roster building, it'd be smart to move Melo. He has a full no trade. And he wants to play in New York, so.
And I mean, he said he would go. He said he would consider the Clippers, the Cavs, and the Lakers. The Lakers should never make that trade. It doesn't.
I don't think the Lakers would do that. And the Clippers, who like what do they even have to trade us?
Well, the Cavs, you want Kevin Love, which is never going to happen, and the Clippers, you want Blake Griffin, which I don't think is ever going to happen. But Melo to the Clippers does make a lot of sense in my opinion because they could desperately use a small forward. He provides the scoring pop with Chris Paul out right now, and then once Chris Paul comes back, Melo basically just becomes a stand-up shooter. So like it makes a lot of sense for the Clippers, but what the Cavs or what the Knicks would have to get would, I mean, you might be able to steal Ray Felton to become your point guard, backup point guard at least, and then like a bunch of just young, not proven pieces, and hopefully a draft pick or two.
Right, I just don't see how that trade works without putting Blake Griffin in it. Just looking up and down the roster and looking at like what they have to trade, their only young guys are like Bryce Johnson and Diamond Stone, who we know both of those guys pretty well.
I think they're both in the D League right now too.
Right. This isn't like the Clippers are an old team.
But I mean, if you just took the picks, so you got like 2017, 2018 first rounders, and then say they put Felton in there and a second rounder. At some point, the Knicks have to realize they're not going to get a franchise player back for Melo.
Right.
Especially a young one.
No, yeah. It's past that point in terms of trading.
I mean, it was probably past that 2 years ago.
Yeah, the best time to trade him would have been before they signed him to the second contract.
Right. But at that time, you still had the belief that he could be a piece.
Well, that was the year we were the 2 seed. Like, there was no way we were trading Melo that year.
No, absolutely. But I'm saying, like, I don't think you should have ever traded him, to be honest. But
yeah, I mean, I think this is just the way it played out, and it kind of sucks, but it's just the way it is.
But you definitely have to find something to go right, at least.
Speaking of things going right, how about the Sixers? They've won 10 out of their last 13 games, and Joel Embiid looks like
he hasn't even played
NBA center.
He hasn't even played in some of them, and they've won.
I know.
So,
but he's putting up, what is it, like 20 and 10 in like 23 minutes a game?
Yeah, pretty much, something like that. That's another team.
He's pretty good.
They're gonna move Okafor at some point. They have to almost.
Yeah, they have way too many big guys.
And Noel becomes I think restricted free agent this offseason, so there could be some shakeups there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Hawks looking to probably move Millsap at some point.
I don't know why the Hawks would be moving Millsap. I mean, they're the 4th seed in the standings right now. They're a game out of the 2nd seed. I feel like I'd hold on to them.
I think they just realized that you're not going to beat the Cavs. So just restart.
The only team in this conference that believes they can beat Cleveland is the Raptors.
I honestly think Boston now thinks they can too, just like the way Isaiah's playing.
This Isaiah season is like...
he should be an all-star game starter, just saying.
I I mean, obviously, it's not like he's obviously not the same player as Steph, but it reminds me of the year Steph broke out, and that like now his team just believes they can beat anyone based on his shooting.
Yeah, I mean the kid's second in scoring in the NBA. He leads the league in fourth quarter points per game. Like he's just a closer.
Like 5'8". Like
he's just a killer. That's like the only way to explain it. Just like a junkyard dog that wants to rip your head off.
There was one game he played. I think it was against Miami, where he put the entire team on his back. Like he scored like the Celtics' last like 12 points in the game, and like Miami was like matching him shot for shot. And he was just like, all right, I gotta go make another one, and they won the game. It was like in Boston, and
yeah, he just refuses to lose, and it's someone that's been doubted his entire career. Like he was doubted in high school that he couldn't play high D1 basketball because
he was the 60th pick in the draft too.
Yeah, I know, and he's killing it. I mean, that's going to turn out to be one of the best trades, and probably in a long time for Boston, getting him from Phoenix.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then another team that's hot on the radar is the Wizards. That seem like they've finally figured it out with that backcourt.
I think that figuring it out just means that Bradley Beal's stayed healthy, knock on wood.
Yeah, but I mean, they came together. It's been pretty surprising. Like that they dressed up in all black for their game against Boston. So
yeah, that was a weird thing.
I was like, it was a funeral. They won the game. They backed it up. They're playing for each other. It's been impressive.
Yeah, the East has been a little bit different than I expected. Like the Pacers haven't been as good as people thought. The Wizards are up there.
Well, the Pacers started out like 0-11 on the road. It's pretty hard to turn that around.
Actually, they're 16-6 at home, 6-16 on the road.
Yeah,
so that puts them exactly 500.
Literally sneak one road game out early on, and you might have been okay. But it took them 11 games.
I still think the Bucks are gonna get into the playoffs.
They're having a tough time right now, but they certainly have the talent. There's no doubt in that.
I don't know. I think they're a better team than the Bulls. Well,
Chris Middleton should be coming back relatively soon, so that changes a lot.
And then Giannis is a deserving All-Star starter as well.
And Jabari is probably a deserving reserve.
Yeah. I think Jason Kidd has done a really good job with that team.
Absolutely. Brogdon is going to be great. We'll see with Thon Maker. That's like a wait-and-see approach. But they seem like they got to steal with Brogdon for sure. And we both knew that watching him at Florida or at Virginia. You could tell that kid just knows.
Like 6 years he played in Virginia.
Yeah, he just knows how to win.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the East. Then the West, we got the Warriors, as expected, as the 1 seed right now, playing pretty good basketball. Obviously, they've pretty much already had their same amount of losses as they did last season. No one was
they're already at 7 losses. I don't know what this is, man.
Yeah, no one was to expect that they could just run away with it since it's the first year of this new crew. But they definitely look to be all that was advertised.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously don't have their foot fully on the gas pedal in every game. I think that's the lesson they took from last year. They kind of wore down towards the end. They don't want that to happen again this year. So they're obviously not a worse team just because their record is worse than last year, but they show flashes of what they can do. I mean, that Cavs game, it was an absolute shellacking of the Cavs who don't look very good right now, obviously, but
that was when it all started, impressive. Pretty much.
Right, yeah. I think that loss might have been part of what's put them in this kind of funk. So, I mean, this Warriors team should still absolutely be considered the odds-on favorite to win the title.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, people said that they wouldn't fit together and that it would be tough to figure out the shots and everything. Well, Klay's taking the same amount of shots. KD takes 2 less shots a game than he did last season. Steph takes 2 less shots a game than he did last season, and so does Draymond. But they're all still averaging like pretty much the same. I mean, Steph obviously dropped from 30 points a game. Like, how could you not when you have someone that's the second best player in the universe come join your team? But he's still playing well. I think he's playing better than he did last year, to be honest. He just knows when to attack. He's been unbelievable getting to the hoop. Yeah, I mean, he's killing it getting to the rim right now. Like, that was a part of his game last year. He always looked to shoot first. Now he looks to drive, and then that gets him into the game, gets him to see the ball go through the hoop, and then he starts to shoot after that. So, like, he had a good game in Charlotte last night. They had a good team win. So they're tough. The Spurs are, like they always are, just dominating, and nobody even says a word about them. LeBron.
Kawhi Leonard has completed his transformation into full-fledged NBA superstar.
He's probably the third.
His game against Cleveland being evidence of that. I think he's probably the third best player in the league.
Yeah,
right now.
I think so too. I mean, he worked out with Kobe all summer, and you can, if you watch one game, you could say that.
See some Kobe in him.
Yeah, you could see he definitely learned something. He when he was drafted, nobody thought he could play offense. He was basically just strictly a defensive player, like a Thabo Cephalosha kind of thing.
Yeah, because he couldn't shoot in college.
Exactly. Now, last year he was I think he was third in 3-point percentage behind Redick and Curry, and then this year he's taking step back threes in crunch time and just dropping them nothing but net. So I mean, he developed quite an offensive game to say the least.
Yeah.
And then yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna talk about the Rockets also, just because.
Have at it.
The Rockets have been, I wouldn't say a complete surprise. I thought for sure they'd be better than they were last year, but I assumed when Mike D'Antoni took over as coach, it would just be one of those teams gave up 120 points a game, and they are giving up a bunch of points, but they're giving up 108, which is an acceptable level if you're going to score 114 a game, which is significantly more than anybody besides the Warriors. So this is a team to watch out for in the playoffs. If a Spurs-Rockets series does eventually happen, which that's how it's shaping up likely to be right now, that would be... I think that could possibly be the best series of the whole playoffs, because I would expect the Warriors to be pretty comfortable in a series they play.
Yeah, I look at the Rockets as the antithesis of the Knicks. It's they have an owner that has a vision, with a GM that completely buys in, has a great relationship, and understands the goal, who hires a coach that has the same vision, wants to run up-tempo.
A guy who coached the Knicks, by the way.
Right. And then also has a superstar that completely is in love with everything that's happening and likes the vision and likes the coaching staff and likes the management. And I don't know if you've been paying attention, but James Harden's actually playing defense this year. He's legitimately exerting effort on the defensive end, and they're playing decent defense, at least better defense than anyone thought they were going to play with their current roster. So, I mean, it shows you what can happen when people actually buy in.
It's the total opposite of last year. I mean, last year, James Harden showed up overweight at the beginning of the season and played overweight the entire rest of the year. And, it showed. I mean, he didn't show any effort on defense. They still scored some points, but,
he's going to score. He's a natural-born scorer. He's going to get points.
Right. But this is the opposite of that. This team is really buying in right now, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, he's my MVP right now, if I had to vote today.
Yeah, I think I'd probably vote Harden as well.
I believe he's at least close. He has a chance to lead the league in points and assists, which would be the first person, and so does Russ, but they'd both be the first person since, Tiny Archibald, I think, was the last person to do it. So there's that. The Clippers are trying to get healthy. Chris Paul's down. Blake just came back. So have to take a wait-and-see approach there. And then everything else out there is kind of up for grabs. Utah looks great. I think this could be the year that Utah maybe surprises somebody in the playoffs. Everybody else, though, is...
Well, it's shaping up that they'll face the Clippers, and I really like that matchup for them.
Right. Especially if
they can certainly beat the Clippers.
If they can sneak out the 4 seed instead of the 5, that would be great help to them.
Yeah, because it's tough to win in Utah.
Exactly. Elevation and all that to the side, pretty much. It's more so just a tough environment, and then you add that. But, yeah, so the NBA, we're coming to the All-Star break pretty soon.
And Russ is still averaging a triple-double. Just as
he is. He's averaging a triple-double every other game, pretty much.
30.7 points, 10.4 assists, 10.7 rebounds.
So he's on pace to have, I think it's 41, I believe, triple-doubles by the end of the season. Something like that.
Yeah, it's every other game, so.
Yeah, he's pretty close. So, there's that. We got Yanni playing great as a triple-double machine. James Harden doing the same. LeBron having some triple-doubles. There's a lot of triple-doubles this year.
Yeah, there's a lot of good all-around guys right now in the league.
Yeah, I think it's in a good spot. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it is a good spot for the league. I mean, I don't know, regardless of what you think about the Warriors and super teams and stuff, it's a good time. I mean, we're at that mid-season lull right now, but you can tell the playoffs are going to be exciting.
Oh, absolutely. And there's probably only one thing that would be more exciting than the playoffs. Can you guess what that is?
No, what's that?
It may have something to do with our next topic.
Okay, I'm listening.
March Madness may be much better than the NBA playoffs.
This college basketball season has been already like one of the most exciting that I can remember. And it's not even February, forget about March.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with the fact that the ACC is the best conference of all time, point blank, period.
Yeah, the only conference I can remember that even comes close to this is the Big East from the year that Kemba and UConn won the title, but the bottom of that conference was a lot weaker than the bottom of this conference.
I will, to Selection Sunday, and probably beyond, probably to the National Championship, I will make the argument that every single ACC team deserves a spot.
Yeah, I mean, any of these teams can beat anybody, and they've shown that by, doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I told you this, and I said it to anyone that will listen. The ACC has had 3 teams that lost a basketball game this season by 50 plus points. All 3 of those teams have at least one win against a ranked team. 2 of them have 2 wins against a ranked team. So what the heck? Like, what other conference in the world would have a team lose by 50 and still be able to beat a top 25 team?
Yeah, there are no off days in this ACC. I mean, like, there's no game that you can ever take for granted.
Georgia
Tech. I think. Yeah. I mean, Duke came into the season with all this hype, and I'm not saying that means they're bad.
No.
They're 3 and 4 in the conference. You know, like, that's how good this conference is.
If it ended today, Duke would be the 8 seed and Syracuse would be the 9, or vice versa. Syracuse would be the 8 and Duke would be the 9. So, what's that tell you?
Yeah, so that's where we're at.
And then you have
the only team with the 1 loss in the ACC is UNC, and I certainly don't feel like safe every time they go out there.
I will put my life on the fact that they have more than 1 loss by the end of this conference.
Oh yeah, no, I think they'll definitely lose some more. I mean, if they're scheduled on the pipeline, they have like their next 4 games are not too bad. I could see them winning all of those.
No, you couldn't. It's the ACC.
Or no, their next 3. I'm sorry, their next 3 are against teams that like. They should be. Obviously, not saying they will because it's the ACC. But then after that, it's like a murderer's row down the stretch, starting with Notre Dame and Duke in the same week. So, yeah. I mean, I think UNC has looked good, but the start of their conference schedule was always easier than the end of it. So, I think they'll be right down there with everybody else by the end of the conference schedule.
Yeah. So, I mean. Jonah and I talked about this when NC State just came off a victory against Duke at Duke, which was a very big win for them, a team that a lot of people thought was going to be much better than they are, which brought them to 14-7 and 3-5 in conference, which, I mean, you could very easily make the argument, especially with this NC State team, say they finish conference play like 8-10, 9-9, end up getting to maybe win 2 games in the conference tournament, they could very easily be one of the last 4 teams in, and then play in those first 4, and find themselves playing well into March. Like, that's just how talented the ACC is.
Yeah, I think there's going to be at least one team that's under 500 in conference play that makes the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I mean, so Georgia Tech is a great story, but like nobody expected them to even be. I don't know. Nobody expected them to have 4 conference wins. They already have 4 conference wins, and 2 of them are pretty notable.
Yeah.
But
yeah, they beat UNC and Florida State. Both were ranked in the top 10 when they beat them.
Yeah. So
both were double-digit wins.
Yeah, exactly. And then they throw up the dud and lose by 53 to Duke. So like that's I don't know how to explain it, but I mean,
and the opposite thing happened. UNC lost by 50 to us, and then beat you guys. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know. To me, if the conference ended today, you could probably only throw like 8 teams in, just because they just beat each other alive. Like, that's the only problem I could really see, is that this conference is going to kill each other. And you're going to have some really good teams miss out on March just because they're, I don't know, maybe they'll finish the season like 19-11, and slim chance they're going to get in with that. But if you're 19-11 and you're in the ACC, it's a good chance you beat some really good teams.
Well, the latest bracketology came out today, and there's 10 ACC teams in.
Who's the bottom couple? Is Georgia Tech in?
Clemson and Miami are both in the last 4 in.
Clemson is the last 4 in?
Yeah, and so is Miami.
Clemson's sitting at 1-6 currently in the ACC.
Yeah, right. The thing is, like, at some point you have to win some basketball games. Like, obviously none of those 6 losses are bad losses, but you can't have that many losses still. Like, if they want to make the tournament, they're going to have to go at the very least 7-4 the rest of the way.
At the very least.
The very least.
Like, that's the absolute worst case scenario, and there's probably not the best chance that they're going to win 7 games.
I mean, Syracuse made it at 9-9 last year, so you figure maybe they'd give an 8-10 team a bid, but
you got to beat a notable team though. Like, you can't just beat the bottom teams 8 times. You got to have a couple of ranked wins in there.
Right. I mean, Clemson has got to take advantage of some of these games. They got to be beating teams like Pitt, Georgia Tech for sure, and then
basically
they got to have some bigger wins.
Yeah,
too.
they're gonna have to get at least. They're probably gonna have to get 2 wins out of like Duke, Louisville, North Carolina, Florida State, Notre Dame.
Right, because like, I don't think Clemson's bad, but like at the same time,
exactly,
you still have to be winning games.
Exactly. So that's the conference that I don't know. I mean, I think any team that comes out of that conference alive has a really good chance to win it all. Like, no matter who it is, they're battle tested. They all have talent. Like, there's going to be a good team. I would pretty much bet my life on the fact that they'll have 1 Final Four team, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they had more than that. Like 2 or 3 would probably be deserving.
Just the whole Final Four is the ACC.
I mean, you might as well just play the ACC tournament as like the national championship game.
Yeah, I mean, there's
I don't
know, maybe 6 teams that I could possibly see in a Final Four game in the ACC.
I could very easily see Duke and North Carolina in the Final Four. I think I think Louisville has a really good shot. I think Notre Dame and Virginia are just on the outskirts, and Florida State's probably with them.
Right. Yeah, it's the same 6 teams I was thinking. But, like, there's other teams that can make a run. I could see Virginia Tech making a run. They've beaten some teams. NC State can make a run.
Right.
Wake Forest is beating teams. I mean,
Right.
Syracuse, nobody thought they'd do it last year, but, I mean,
yeah, I still
you shouldn't count them out.
I just don't think they're going to make the tournament, to be honest. Like, they still have to play. They got Duke, Florida State, NC State, Virginia. That's their next 4.
Yeah, it's not easy.
So, like, they're already like what 12-9. So if you go 1-3, which I kind of expect them to do in those next 4 games, you're sitting at 13-12.
Right. Yeah, because they have some. I mean, their losses in the non-conference were mostly okay. The St. John's loss was really bad.
That's the worst. That might be the worst loss all year.
Right, like the South Carolina loss looks a lot better now than it did then. But even still, like Syracuse can't go 9-9 again in conference and make the tournament because their non-conference record isn't good enough. So,
yeah, I mean they're looking at 2 games against Louisville, one game against Duke, one game against Florida State. Like, good luck.
I think they got to go. They're 4-4 now. I think they got to go 6-4 down the stretch if they want to make it, and that's going to be a tough ask.
Yeah, I mean, you get Clemson once, you get Pitt once. They already blew out Pitt, so I bet you Pitt comes out with something to prove in that one. They get Georgia Tech twice. I could easily see Georgia Tech taking one from them. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of just flip a coin.
Right, they're at Clemson. Clemson's going to badly need that game. So.
Yeah. So then what else you got for the ACC? Anything?
I think we've done enough with the ACC. Is what
I think everyone in the world has only talked about the ACC. So we'll go to the Big 12, I guess. That's probably maybe the third best conference this year.
Kansas is just going to win it because they always do.
Yeah, I mean, they took their annual loss at West Virginia as usual. I'm sure they'll beat Baylor twice as usual. And maybe,
I don't think Baylor's that good.
Maybe take a loss to Iowa State, but yeah, this is definitely Kansas's conference. I don't really see.
Yeah, there's 10 teams in the Big 12 because of course there are, and the latest bracketology has 7 of them in the tournament, which is an even better percentage than the ACC has. So this is a really strong Big 12 right now. There's a lot of teams. I mean, Baylor, Kansas, West Virginia obviously could beat anybody. Iowa State could beat anybody. They have one of the best point guards in the country. Kansas State plays people tough. Same thing with Texas Tech. And even TCU is in the last 4 byes right now. So.
Yeah, I don't think 7 will get in. I'll give them 5.
No, I don't think so either. But I think it'll be at least 5.
Yeah. So I know we just stopped talking about the ACC, but I just had quite the alert come up on my phone. So a favorite team of mine, they may have just been banned from their own locker room and told they're not allowed to wear Duke apparel.
Yeah, I saw that. Did Jeff Goodman tweet that?
I believe so. I just got the article on Bleacher Report.
I don't understand the implications of that. What that means.
It means they don't deserve to be Duke basketball players currently.
So, hypothetically,
we don't have a team.
Going to get dressed if they don't go to the locker room.
As of today, Duke basketball is no longer.
And does the Duke apparel include their uniforms, or are they going to wear another team's jerseys on the court?
To be completely honest with you, if we run out the equipment managers next game, I will not be surprised.
I mean, I thought Coach K wasn't calling meetings right now. I thought he was
Well, it was quite necessary if you've watched any of the last 20 minutes of
I suppose
freaking NC State game. Oh my god. All right. Anyways, Big 12. So, so the Big 12, I give them 5. Maybe even, I'll give them 5. The Iowa State, TCU, Texas Tech, some of those guys are gonna get knocked around. Only one will probably make it out of those 3.
So you like Kansas State more than Iowa State?
I do. I think Kansas State's really good, yeah.
Yeah, I think Kansas State's good too, but I kind of lock both Kansas State and Iowa State. I don't think Texas Tech and TCU will ultimately make it, but I like Iowa State a lot. I always like them every year, and
yeah, the problem.
I don't know why, but
the problem with me for that is that they're 13-6 right now, and I mean there's some really tough games that they have left. They got to play West Virginia twice. They got Kansas at Kansas, which there's no way they beat Kansas there. They have to go to Vanderbilt their next game. They got at Kansas State. They have to play Baylor again. There's not they're in the meat of the tough part of their schedule, and I don't know if they're going to be able to survive it with basically only. I mean, I like the team a lot. I like Burton a lot. I like Morris a lot. I like Long a lot. They definitely have good players, but I don't know. I think they're missing that killer they had with Niang.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just got to take care of business. If they lose the games they're supposed to, which might be the West Virginia, I don't know. You figure they'll lose at least 3 more, but they don't have a big margin of error.
Yeah, I mean they'll probably be underdogs in 4 games at least, which will give them 10 losses if they just lose those games. 10 losses is a lot for a tournament team. But this year it's very. This year is very
unless they win the Big
respectable.
12 tournament.
If you have 10 losses this year, you're still a really good team.
Right. I think there's just going to be a lot of teams with a lot of losses in the tournament.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with them or Kansas State. I think both teams would be like a good 11, 10, 7, somewhere around there, 8, 9.
Yeah.
Somewhere between
for sure.
7 and 11, they'll be dangerous. But, yeah, that's definitely still Kansas's division conference. No way they lose it, in my opinion. So next we'll go to the Big East, which started out real strong. Hit quite a hard brick wall. Villanova's still at the top. Just took their second loss, but they're still definitely the best team in the conference, in my opinion. Creighton lost Maurice Watson Jr. for the season, responded by going...
They look way out of sorts right now.
Yeah, 0-2 since then. Got smacked by Georgetown.
They scored 51 points against Georgetown.
Yeah, lost by 20. Marquette looks really good. That's a positive.
Yeah, I think Marquette might have just taken Creighton's place as one of the good teams in the Big East.
Wojo has that team playing on all cylinders right now. They are a very dangerous team.
I was tuning in to the Villanova game, expecting to see normal Marquette jerseys, and I'd forgotten that they wear these super weird Jordan Brand ones now.
Yeah.
These futuristic experimental uniforms, but beyond that, they look pretty good. I mean, they have 3 losses in the conference.
Which they
all on the road. They haven't lost a home game.
They took a lot of those early on too. Those losses came they started out pretty low.
Right, they lost at Seton Hall by 3, who's okay. That's not a great loss. But then the other 2 conference losses are at Villanova and at Butler, where we both know it's really hard to win.
Right.
And they won at Creighton. They had a huge win against Villanova, and then they've got a couple easier games against St. John's and DePaul coming up. So
now the question becomes, I think you definitely have. I think you lock Villanova and Butler, obviously. Those 2 teams I think are definitely going to be in the tournament. Creighton was 18-0, or 13-0, sorry, before conference play. Now they're 18-3 and don't have probably their most important player.
Right, they're trending the wrong way, for sure.
Is there a chance they don't make the tournament? They still have to play Villanova again. They still got to play Butler. And they're losing to teams at the bottom of the conference right now anyways.
They have to play Marquette again, too. Yeah. I mean...
It's very possible.
I think it's more likely than not that they still make it, but...
You have to think they're going to figure it out, but still.
Right. It's still a well-coached team. They still have Patton. They still have Foster. So I would expect that eventually they'll figure it out.
I'll give them 5 also. Just the top 5 right now. Seton Hall has a chance, in my opinion, but I don't think they're going to do it.
Yeah, Seton Hall is in the most recent bracketology, but I'm not sure I agree with that.
I mean, they got players. Desi Rodriguez is good, and Delgado just had 22 rebounds the other night, which is mind-blowing for college basketball. But, I mean, they definitely can play, but I don't know.
They have some pretty good wins. They beat Marquette. They beat South Carolina. They beat Cal. Those are okay.
Yeah, but
they beat Iowa on the road.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna have an argument. They'll probably.
They're fine. I wouldn't have them right now either, though.
Yeah, they definitely need to get some more notable wins, and then Xavier, we'll see if they can figure it out. They were a trendy team preseason.
Tonight.
Yeah, they're currently sitting at 5. I think they're gonna get smacked tonight personally against Cincinnati, but that's just me. So Big Ten. The Terps sitting at number 1. Well, tied with Wisconsin, but we got a better overall record, so that makes us number 1. Probably nobody saw that one coming. I didn't see that one coming, to be completely honest with you. 18-2. No way did I think they'd only have 2 losses at this point, even though their schedule's been extremely weak. Then the rest of the Big Ten.
It's an off year for the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Purdue's pretty good. I think Wisconsin's pretty good. I think Northwestern is definitely going to make the tournament this year for the first time ever, which is kind of insane. I think Indiana's going to get it figured out. I think Michigan State will have a strong run, knowing Tom Izzo. But other than that, I mean, there's not a whole lot here. I could easily see them not having only Wisconsin be ranked at the end of the year, or not even having a ranked team.
due a lot. So I don't know. I would expect them to be ranked at the end of the year because I just think they're a good team.
They're going to lose when they play Maryland on the 4th, just saying.
Oh, you think so?
I mean, I'll cheer my little heart out.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's an interesting conference because you have a lot of teams that you just like. The only team that I would describe as just flat out bad is Rutgers.
Yes, quite bad. They do play decent defense though, which makes the game close.
Like every other team, like besides Rutgers, every single team in the Big Ten has either 3, 4, 5, or 6 wins in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's like the ACC in that they're all just like taking bites out of each other all the time. They're just
all
of
bad
them
teams.
are less good,
yes.
Right? So like, it's the same kind of feeling you get with the ACC, but I think that probably you're going to end up with maybe 6 or so teams in the tournament from this conference, maybe 6 or 7, I guess.
Yeah, Minnesota, I think, deserves it, even though they're sitting at 3 and 5. I mean,
but they've lost 4 games in a row now. Like they gotta.
Yeah, but they're ranked the whole time before that.
Right.
This isn't. I mean, they won 8 games last year, and they're sitting at what, 15 and 6 right now. Like they've almost doubled their total from last year.
Right, and like it's not like their Big Ten record is irretrievable, especially with some after the Maryland game. They got a few easier games coming up after that. So
yeah, like you said, you look at the ACC as like every game is winnable because every team is good. The Big Ten, you look at
like every team is losable. Like,
well, I mean, you look at it like every game is winnable just because the teams aren't that great. Like you could very easily see any team going anywhere and getting a win, just for the opposite reasons of the ACC.
Right, and like no road trip is safe. I mean, teams losing at Penn State, like
yeah, Penn State's on the rise. They're going to be they're on the right direction for that program for sure.
Yeah, and like even Nebraska's won a few games. Like they beat Indiana.
They beat Maryland at Maryland.
Right, yeah, it's Maryland's only loss. It's Nebraska, who used to be like a basketball nothing. So.
Unbelievable. Still should never lost that game, but it's all right. Yeah, so the Big Ten is probably only better than the SEC, in my opinion.
Yeah, I stand by my prediction of Wisconsin to win it, though.
I'm still going to ride with Indiana. I trust them.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got the leg up on me in the other conference that we picked, so.
Yeah, I got the leg down. Or no, we both picked Duke, so.
Well, yeah, we both picked Duke. We also had Villanova, Kansas, and Kentucky, which all look good, but.
Yeah, and then I got Arizona, and Jonah has UCLA, and don't be surprised if neither of them win it, and Oregon steals that one.
Right, yeah. Both of us were down on Oregon at the start of the year, but I don't know. I think Oregon loses tonight. You want to talk about the Pac-12
Yeah,
right now?
Speaking of which.
Yeah.
What do you got?
The Pac-12 right now, there are 2 undefeated teams. Arizona and Oregon are both 7-0 in the conference, and they're both 18-2 overall, so that's an exact tie at the top. UCLA is going to have a hard time winning the conference now. Just like
3 games.
With that loss to USC last night, that pretty much sealed it in terms of winning the regular season conference title. They're not coming back against 2 teams with 3 games down in the loss column. So I'm not giving up on UCLA as a possible Final Four team yet, but they do have some stuff to figure out. This is not a team that can really play defense at all. So
not only are they 3 games back, but they also lost to both those teams, so that's like an extra game.
Right, yeah. So they're 3.5 games back on 2 different teams, basically.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think Sean Miller is going to run away with the Coach of the Year this year. The man did not have who most people thought was his best player and leading scorer for the entire season until, the last game? Last 2 games, right?
Yeah.
So.
Right, yeah, he came back for UCLA.
So, I mean, to be sitting at 18-2, 7-0 in conference, in a definitely a better Pac-12, and without your best player for the majority of that time, bravo. Oregon is going to... I knew they'd get it figured out after they started slow. I mean, they're too talented not to. They're a very dangerous team. Utah is getting so much better by the second. Like, they just started getting on this hot streak in the Pac-12.
I'm telling you, upset special tonight.
Yeah, Vegas is calling it too because I think by tip-off Utah's going to be favored.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's currently even, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Utah favored by tip. So I think a lot of people are going to try to throw some money on that one.
Yeah, this conference is kind of the opposite of the ones we've been talking about lately. Like, there's 6 teams that I would consider good and 6 teams that I would consider bad, and there's a pretty clear division between them, I would say. I mean, Stanford and Arizona State can make trouble for teams.
And you got
Washington has Markel Fultz.
Exactly.
That's like a poorly coached team that I think is.
Yeah, but Markel Fultz can beat anybody at any time, so
right.
They could go steal a game from anybody. And USC is doing this entire thing this season without Benny Boatwright, who has yet to play a game. Who's easily their second best player, might even be their best player. So once they add him to McLaughlin, like, watch out. That team's gonna cause problems. They were they the 8 seed or the 9 seed last year? I think they were the 8, lost to Providence, who then played North Carolina, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so, I mean, as an 8 seed last year, nobody even thought they were going to make the tournament. Now they're probably going to be around the same seed, and they're going to...
I think it turns out Enfield's a good coach.
He seems like Dunk City wasn't just a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they hire those guys based on, based on 2 tournament games, and they end up not really being good major program coaches, but I think Enfield has turned out to be different from that.
Right.
I mean, they were undefeated until December 30th.
Yeah, no, exactly. They've only lost in conference. And like I said, they don't have their second best player, maybe their best player.
Right, and they haven't lost any bad games. They haven't lost any of the quote-unquote bad teams in the conference.
Right.
They lost Arizona, Oregon, Cal, and Utah.
Right. So we've talked about all the conferences, but there's one team we've left out, and it happens that they're bound to be the number 1 team in the country.
We didn't talk about the SEC, but is that really necessary?
That's not a conference. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's not a conference.
No.
Okay, that's fair.
No one plays in it except for Kentucky, and somehow they still find a way to lose. So it's kind of impressive, to be honest.
It's a 3-team conference, plus they'll probably get a 4th team in the tournament, but
it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Kentucky, and then nothing, and then 100, maybe 99, 100, 101 is Florida, South Carolina, I don't even know, Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, somebody will sneak in there. Tennessee, I mean, maybe Arkansas is probably the 4th best team. But.
South Carolina's good. Yes, South Carolina can play basketball. They'll have a good chance to win some games in the tournament. But
I love Sindarius Thornwell. He reminds me a lot of Marcus Smart.
I really wish they had PJ Dozier for that Kentucky game because I think they would beat them.
Yeah, well, Kentucky's vulnerable. I mean, they didn't really look at that Tennessee game.
Because they don't...
I mean, obviously Fox is his status is a little uncertain right now, but...
You just have to, they just don't understand it, and they don't play anyone ever in the regular season, and it's very frustrating because they win all these games, but, they're not actually that great. We're about to find out...
Kansas is going to smack them?
We're about to find out on Saturday how good they really are. Because, I mean, I think Mason and Graham is better than Monk and Fox.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think they're going to prove
it. And they just know that much more about playing basketball.
But of course, guess who's at the home team? Like always.
Right.
So they got that edge. But yeah, I think both teams are coming off a loss. I think Kansas is going to go get them. Jackson's playing better. And I just think that they're a little bit of a better team than Kentucky right now.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's kind of the SEC. That's more of just Kentucky and nobody else. Basically, I think for that conference, if you put anyone in the ACC in the conference, they have a chance to be 1 or 2.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
So that says something, I guess. So the odds-on favorite to be the number 1 team in the country come Monday when the rankings are released. The AP poll is going to be Gonzaga since Villanova and Kansas both lost this week. So they're sitting at 20-0 currently. Really, the only tough games they have left are at St. Mary's and at BYU, which Jonah and I both think they're going to get. So we expect them to go undefeated to finish the season. And this is probably Mark Few's best team. A lot of people always try to figure out the year that Gonzaga is going to finally take the next step and get to the Final Four or have a chance to win it all. Because there's been so many times that they've been the number one seed in some region in March, and they just don't ever make it out of it. So this is probably his team that people had the most questions about coming in, just because this is the first time he's ever really used, like, I mean, they had Kyle Wilcher the last couple of years, but they didn't use the transfer market very much until this year. It was always kind of grow your freshmen, build from within the program. And now they have 2 stud freshmen that come off the bench to go along with Nigel Williams-Goss and Matthews, who are 2 transfers. And then Karnowski's back and healthy. So, I mean, I think Nigel Williams-Goss is I think he's definitely a top 5 point guard in college basketball. He's probably the best player that nobody's ever heard of. And I think that this could absolutely be the year they get to the Final Four. They're going to be the number 1 overall seed in March, I think, because I don't see anybody beating them until then.
No, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think this is just a really strong team. It's not just a team with a lot of wins. I mean, and you can see that by how they played the non-conference. I mean, they beat Iowa State. That's a good win. The Arizona win looks better every day.
Right.
And like, they took quick care of Tennessee, Washington. Like, they've been beating the teams they're supposed to beat, and they're taking care of business in their conference too. So, like, I'm always skeptical of Gonzaga teams. Basically every year, and in the tournament, I'm usually proven right about that. But I think this could be the year that a Gonzaga team finally makes the Final Four. I think this team is legitimately one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the country.
Yeah, I've been a Gonzaga hater since the day that Adam Morrison stepped on that campus and had a rivalry with JJ Redick cross country, even though they never freaking played. But yeah, so it takes a lot for me to say that I like Gonzaga, and they're going to get the West Regional, which means they're going to get to play in California, which obviously isn't that far away from Gonzaga, which is in Washington. So they got a lot of advantages coming their way.
Right, yeah. I mean, they'll be in that West Regional. I mean, assuming that they win out, which obviously it's always a good strategy. They're going to do anything, college basketball, especially this season, but
they're at least going to be heavy favorites in every game.
Right.
So, take that as you may. Anybody else you want to talk about?
Let's see. I'm just going to look at the rankings real quick to see if there's somebody we didn't talk about that I like.
All right. I mean, since Cincinnati's found an offense to go with their good defense.
Yeah, which has been a thing that they've been looking for a long time. Like,
many years, yep.
Many years, yeah. But, yeah, the American Athletic Conference has got a couple of good teams now. SMU looks really good. They should be in the tournament.
Semi Ojeleye, transfer from Duke.
Yeah.
Looks like he should play, I don't know. He's like a muscular version of a defensive tackle. He's looks like a linebacker, but he's too big to be a linebacker.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
All right.
I think
So that was your NBA and NCAA recap. Oh, also, shout out to UConn women who are about to go for number 100 in like 5 games. That's unreal. Like, I don't care who you play, that's unreal.
It's just it's like a totally different world over there.
I mean, it's not like they're playing teams that are jokes. Like, they're blowing out teams that are good women's basketball teams.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
And even if you were playing teams that were jokes, to do it 100 times in a row without having a slip up is quite impressive.
Right, exactly. I mean, like, it's just like in any college sport, anything can happen. So to just prevent that thing from happening over and over and over again is impressive.
Exactly. Year after year. But, I mean, shout out to them. That's very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you got?
That's about it.
All right. So we'll see you back next week for Super Bowl weekend. We'll probably talk about how much we don't like either team, even though Jonah and I have recently become Falcons fans.
Yeah, they can have the title of America's team for this week only.
Not a lot of Falcons fans, just a lot of Patriots haters out there.
Right.
Kind of the same with the Cowboys, you know how the feeling is.
Yeah.
So we'll see you back here next week, and thanks for listening.